Art can mean different things to different people. For me, it's all about the joy of creativity. So if you draw, paint, write, dance, sing, craft, play air guitar, or even sculpt using nothing more than mashed potatoes, consider yourself an artist and join our conversation. For the next half hour, meet the artist and learn about their inspiration while we all enjoy the beauty of creativity. Welcome to Season 2 of Art Talk with John Cole Artist. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Art Talk with John Cole Artist. With me, John Cole Artist. Today is Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. And with me tonight, I have the wonderful Sheila Eggert. She is the author of the book that you see in the lower right-hand column. It's The Power of Living Unscripted, Reclaim Creative Control of Your Life. It's currently available on Amazon Kindle. It's on Amazon itself for a printed version. Sheila, welcome to Art Talk.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. I really wanted to have you on for a whole bunch of reasons. Number one, you're incredibly interesting to talk to. We've talked during the book writing process over the last 6 to 7 months. I've seen some of your other interviews. You talk with Angelique Benet the other day. I know you talk with Heather Doran the other day as well. And your involvement and your discussions and things with our different groups as we've gone on this journey together. Just fascinating person. You've got an incredible story that I'd like to talk a little bit about tonight. But first, I'll start with this simple question. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
Who am I? The big question.
Yes.
So I am a woman who has had life experiences that have led me to a new way of being in the world. And I am here to share that and share a way of being with ease and self-trust with others. And my book is a memoir, and it's really chronicles my journey from being a very different way in the world to how I am today. And so the logistical parts of, who am I, what I've done. So I have a 38-year career behind me in corporate leadership development, leadership coaching, diversity and inclusion work. And so I was a very intuitive soul in a corporate environment, working in investment banking and pharmaceutical and industrial gases. And so it's been quite the ride. And I think it's all brought me to where I am today, here talking to you.
I love that. Well, my wife is on. She says, hello, beautiful souls. Hello, Christine.
Hi, Christine.
Yeah, it's interesting that, the fact that you left the corporate environment, which seems to be a common thing with people these days, is to walk away from that type of environment. What made you walk away from that? Was it just, was there a particular reason for it, or did you just feel it was time, or?
It was time, and the company that I was with was going through some massive changes, and the work was changing. So what lights me up and the value that I bring is connection with people and coaching and, just human development, right? And evolution. And so the work was shifting, and it's funny because technically it was a layoff, and I don't use that word because a few months before I knew it was time. And I have a way of connecting and just asking the universe for what I want. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's time. I knew it was time. I had been evolving. I had gotten a coaching certification, and then found this other work in a methodology for really transforming your mindset and, rewiring your identity. And I knew that that's what I was meant to do. Right. And after a 38-year career, right, it's not so easy to just step away. And so at the time, I had already moved across the country and to California. And I just said, you know what, it's time. And I knew that things were shifting in the company. And I said, just let it happen after I move into my new apartment, because I knew I wanted to move closer to the beach over last summer. And I didn't want to have to go through a credit check without a pay stub or, a fully thriving business. And if I could just get 6 months, if I could just have 6 months of severance to just start my process of building my business full time. And so I moved to the beach in August, at the end of August. And then in early October last year, I got my notice. And the thing is, I said, I would tell people I got released from my job. And the funny thing is that I was so okay with it and like ready for it. And other people were like, they didn't even realize. They were like, oh, wait a minute. Are you not working in your job anymore? Because I looked at it so differently.
Right.
And so, and that's very similar to, you would ask me the question when we were talking before about my breast cancer journey. It was the same thing. I looked at it very differently. And so, and that's what's really transformed my life.
Yeah, my mindset is probably, and this is something I've only learned over the last couple of years, because I spent 36 years working for the Coast Guard. But over the last few years, with coaching with Allison Roberts and working and talking with people like yourself over the last, probably about 4 years now, mindset is really what makes the difference. It's really not it's not necessarily the job or the location or the situation that you find yourself in. It's really how you think about that as an outside circumstance, but more importantly, how you think about yourself in that particular situation, right? Because it could be a horrible thing that you're dealing with, but nothing says that you have to follow that rabbit hole into the horrors of cancer or the horrors of having to move or the horrors of divorce you don't have to do that, right?
It's your choice.
It's absolutely your choice. And I never really knew that until, and really, I don't even know if it's something that I learned when somebody said it. It was more like the more you practice it, the more proficient you become, until you get to the point where when the bad things happen, they're really not, you might have a moment of, WTF, bro, right? You might have that, but you're not going to dwell on it and then live with it continually, right? So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it's the whole, does the outside affect the inside, or does the inside affect the outside? And when you make that shift from, I am a victim of what's happening in the world around me, to I create my experience of the world around me, regardless of what's going on. And the other thing that's interesting, you use the word bad, right? When bad things happen. So part of this work is non-judgment.
Right.
And not saying this bad thing happened to me, because that's the labeling and the judgment of something as bad. Then when that's our perception, then we start to feel all the feelings about, oh, why did this happen to me? Or this is bad. And then we go into, I got to figure out this problem. I got to solve this problem and figure it out. And that's not the mindset that actually gives us a sense of calm and ease when we're moving through situations in life that are challenging or not the way we wanted things to turn out.
Right. Yeah. And then, even that idea of solving problems, right? I've got all these things I have to solve, because I'll be honest, I'm guilty of using that word a lot, right? But really what we're doing in a way, I think, or maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but a better way to look at that would be that, we're faced with a particular challenge that we're not comfortable with for whatever reason. I think really what we would do is we would, and this is going to sound strange from somebody like me, but we really are going to be manifesting a different path forward, right? I'd sent something off, and this was really interesting, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I was reading. This is also another strange thing. I was reading a book about the Van Meter visitor, and if you're not familiar with it, back in 1903 in Van Meter, Iowa, this strange winged creature visited this small town for like 3 or 4 nights, and people were so afraid of this thing that had huge bat-like wings and this long beak, and it was like 7 foot tall, right? This crazy cryptid type thing. I'm serious. I mean, the book is totally fascinating to read. But in there, they talk about, in a second, you'll see how this relates, but they talk about some different theories on what this thing could have been. Was it mass hysteria? Was it, somebody's misidentifying a large bird, I suppose. But this thing was reported as being 8 or 9 feet tall, which kind of not a bird. But one of the theories is about this idea that we all can create, that we all are part of the creation process, meaning that when you look at things like paranormal phenomena specifically over time, you see that the things that we reported in the 50s are not the things that we report in the 70s, which is not what we're reporting now. Meaning that UFOs have changed over the years, that this idea of Bigfoot has changed over the years. And the idea being in this theory that we as a collective manifest our own destinies.
So interesting.
I know that sounds kind of weird in what we're talking about here, but I think that it's the same concept, except in more localized form.
Well, it's perception, right? So we all see the world through the filters of our experience and our conditioning and all of those thoughts and beliefs that are stored in our subconscious. So, you see, like when a situation happens, 5 people could see the same situation or be part of the same conversation. And if you ask people what happened, you get 5 different responses,
right?
Because everyone's perception is based on their filters. And so there's a saying that, like, life isn't, what it is, it's what you perceive it is. And so I do think that some of that is at play there.
Right. Yeah, it's all related. I know that kind of took us a little bit off the path of maybe where we thought we were going to go, but I just think it's really interesting because that idea that we can basically control ourselves that closely, because we can, and I think you talk about it. You write this really beautiful letter to cancer that's in your book, and maybe if we could talk about that for a few minutes, because I think it really highlights really the concept behind the story that you're trying to tell us, right? So what maybe if you could share a little thoughts on that particular chapter, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I had already begun to do the work, the inner work, before I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And what's very interesting is a lot of people assume that it was that like shifted my whole way of being in the world. But the way I look at it is, when I shifted what was inside, I was then able to approach cancer with curiosity. And in the chapter before, I talk about, like, the moment that I got the diagnosis, and it was really like my reaction, instead of like, it was, isn't that interesting? And I wonder what this has been brought into my life to teach me. What is the lesson that I'm meant to get from this? And so the entire process was like that. So, there's so much about fighting cancer. And, I remember I had done a breast cancer walk in Central Park with my daughters a couple of years before. And there was this organization that, their motto is "fuck cancer." And sorry, I don't know if I could say that on your podcast. Maybe you might have to.
It's out there now.
But it's printed on T-shirts. And it never sat right with me. And it's really about non-resistance to pain and difficult or challenges in your life. And so I wasn't like, oh, I got to fight this thing. I was like, this is here for a reason. And I get to heal my mind, my body, and spirit in order to heal my body. And that's the way I approached it. And so I started that thank you letter to cancer very early on in the diagnosis. And then I kind of built it over the course of the treatment. And yeah, so, a lot of people will also say, oh, was this in looking back when you knew you were going to be okay? And it was like, nope. I literally started at day one, which was, I am not here to fight you. I don't view you as an enemy. You are here in my life, in my body for a reason. And my work is to find that reason and heal the part of me that will allow my body to heal.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very good. I encourage folks that are either watching live or watching the replay at a later date, or even on one of the podcasts, when it's pushed out, later on this week, to pick up a copy of your book, because that in and of itself, I think, is worth the read, let alone all the other things that are in there, because it's really a very, very well written book. So I applaud you for that. You did a really great job on it.
Thank you.
So good for you. Yeah, I think we talked briefly before we went live about, when I mentioned that particular letter that you wrote, if we, I would propose that if we looked at a lot of our big challenges in life clearly we're involved with it, but maybe take a step back and not necessarily blame these things, because some things, they just happen. Life happens, right? And sometimes we really do get caught up on, and I'm going to use the bad word, because I think that's probably the way most people can relate to it. But when bad things happen, right, we do tend to maybe just not take a more holistic perspective of the particular problem or challenge, but rather focus in on the fact that it's affecting me, or it's affecting my family, or it's something that makes me angry, and now I have to fight it.
Yeah.
Instead of perhaps looking at it as a message or an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, there's that old sort of demonstration of resistance, right? So if I pushed on your hand, what do? You push back.
Right.
And so that idea that like, I got to fight this, first of all, does not help your body at all. Mm-hmm. That fighting, being in that fight or flight response, as I know, causes inflammation in your body, which makes the disease process bigger and more, there's a reason it's called dis-ease. And so there's that resistance that we get when we label something as bad. And I also want to just point out, I did not just sit there and be like, oh, like, what's this meant to, like, I did take steps. I did pursue, Western medicine treatments. I had surgery, I had chemo, I had radiation, and I employed Eastern medicine. So my meditation practice was a huge part of it. I worked with a pranic energy healer throughout. And so, part of it, with that, oh, this is bad, is like that feeling of it's out of my control.
Right.
Right. This is a bad thing that happened. It happened to me and it's not in my control. And I think what I'm offering is, and it's not just about, having cancer or, something, an illness, but it's really about life's challenges. Is where do we find the control? Because when we feel out of control and a victim, mm-hmm. is when we're not really acting in our own best behalf.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to, I had a, it's funny. The way you described it, exactly what happened when I heard that, because just for folks, you probably don't know this, but I'm planning on leaving for Arizona on Sunday, and I happen to start up my truck, which is a brand new 2022 Tacoma. And it's an automatic truck, but it would not shift gears. Called up the shop, come to find out that I had rodents. Rodents had eaten into my truck and eaten the wires or something like that, so the thing wouldn't shift right. So um, it was about me. It was a problem I had to solve. I immediately went into that fight mode, like especially when I heard what they quoted me, $3,000 to have this thing fixed, and my trip is like 3 days away, right? So all this stuff hit me, and there was that maybe hour and a half where it was the old me, the one that immediately went to the victim mode, like why did this happen to me, and et cetera, not thinking that when you do take a step back, it could easily have happened while I was on my way to the desert, or it could have happened while I was in the desert, or it could have happened the morning I was scheduled to leave, right? So,
Yeah.
so
And yeah, and that's when you look at that situation and something, your truck or whatever, I think my comment when I saw that post on your Facebook page was, how lucky are you that it happened?
yeah,
Not when you were in the middle somewhere, but it's the I'm very big on mindfulness and meditation and anything you can do to allow yourself to take that pause and choose a response instead of that automatic reaction.
right,
And when you're in that fight or flight state, and it happens, it happens to me also. And so the idea is not to be this perfect Zen human all the time, smiling at $3,000 of repairs on your truck, but that you lessen the intensity and the duration of that response. So for you with your truck, think back to if it happened a year ago, what would the intensity of that response have been? And what would the duration have been? And really acknowledge yourself that I really didn't spin out that bad, and it lasted for an hour and a half. I would have been screaming at the guy at the dealership, for days, and angry, and whatever.
right,
And then the other thing is, I think for a lot of people, they take challenges like that and they see it as a sign that they're not meant to be doing what they're doing that's causing discomfort. And that resistance to the discomfort of growth, our mind is throwing everything at us. You see, oh, don't go on that trip, John.
right.
What, this could have happened to you in the middle of the thing. There's a reason. You're cursed. Don't go. Like that's the stuff that reptilian brain is offering.
Yeah.
And for me, I was on a journey and I knew where I was headed, and I didn't know how I was going to get there. But in 2018, I visited Santa Monica, where I currently live, for the first time, stood looking out at the Pacific Ocean and said, I'm going to live here. And I just knew it. And so my job was in New Jersey. I was married to a man whose job was in New Jersey. My daughters were both on the East Coast. And I just kind of tucked it away and was like, oh, this is a nice thought. And then things happened, and I left my marriage and I moved into New York City. And 5 months later, I got the breast cancer diagnosis. And then right in the middle of radiation, which was towards the end of treatment, my older daughter calls me and says, Mom, I got this opportunity to interview for a job in LA. Like, should I go for it? And I'm like, yeah. And she said, if I take it, would you relocate with me? And I literally was like, oh, okay, there's the sign.
There's your sign. Yeah.
And so along the way, the challenges, because there was COVID in the middle of that and dealing with all of that. So that kind of shut down the world. So the thought of being across the country from my daughters, wasn't even an issue. So I think it enables you to not let those challenges or the things that you perceive as bad stop you.
Right.
That's, to me, the real power of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think one of the things that was in there that was important too is that when you do have these I don't want to call them goals, but these feelings that something is meant to be, that it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen today or that you have to force the issue. Because sometimes it does take a little bit of time for, quote unquote, the stars to align. But I think that there is something to that idea where when it's time for you to make a move to fulfill your life's purpose, your goal, your dream or whatever, it'll happen when it's time, and I think that sometimes if we push too hard on it, if anything, it makes the present a little more difficult to tolerate. You know what I mean? Because now you're always like, well, how come I can't make this happen? Well, it's just not time yet. Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I talk about after standing there in the park overlooking the Pacific Ocean and getting that knowing, I did not go back to New Jersey and start looking at real estate or start looking for a job there. There was no doing.
Right.
There was being.
Yep.
I was doing the inner work. And then when the stars were aligned, so to speak, and I was an energetic match with that, and it was the right timing, then it happened. But yeah, it's about not forcing it. And the other thing that forcing it and wanting it to happen sooner does is it also stops people from moving towards their vision. Right. Because that's another form of resistance, is that impatience.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's never going to happen for me. Forget it. It's not going to happen for me. Instead of just leaning into that ease of, okay, so, my truck needs some repairs. Okay. I choose to view it as the truck needs repairs, right? It's the isness, right? Because
right. Yep. And in the meantime, have your hour and a half of freak out, but then just take that step back and go, you know what? All right, it's out of my system. Now I can start to think about this from that perspective. And that's kind of exactly how that happened with me, and I really hope that, people that read your book or read my book or some of the other ones that are coming out, Mark De Cordoba's book came out today. He's another one that we spoke with on this podcast a few weeks ago. His book came out today. So I encourage you folks to read, or to look out, or seek it out rather. What is the name of his book here? I make sure I give it to the audience. It's called Pivoting into Balance, Activating the Art of Reflection to Create Personal Equilibrium. It sounds like an amazing title, Sheila. I can tell you that. So,
I know that amazing, the word equilibrium was in there somewhere.
Yeah, it sounds great. I can't wait to read it. Looks like we wanted to keep it to half an hour. We're just at half an hour, and there's so much more I'd love to talk to you about. But I do kind of promise myself to stay within that 30-minute give or take window. But that's my invite to have you come back on the show at some point whenever you have time, because I would love to have another conversation with you. We didn't really talk much about at all, really, the TEDx talk, because you were on the TEDx stage not that long ago.
Yeah.
And you looked stunning. You did an amazing job. And I cannot wait for them to put the video up on YouTube so I can watch again.
Thanks. Yours too. Yeah, that was quite an experience.
It was, yeah. And I know there was a lot of work. I talked to Mark a couple of weeks ago. Like I said, I've talked to Heather and Angelique. I know that, and maybe we can finish up talking about this because I am interested. The book writing process itself, some people find writing easy, some people don't. What was your experience writing the book?
For me, it was another level of healing, of, sitting with past versions of myself that I had been, trying to hide, all this time. And so being able to sit with that And also, again, going right back to what we've been talking about this whole time, is not pushing it. Like when I was feeling like stuck, like, oh, what do I write next? And this feels hard. Taking a break, taking a walk on the beach, dancing around my apartment like a maniac, just leaning into the process, and again, not trying to force it. And I think for many of us, I know you've got the military background, so I can only imagine the structure and the discipline and the doing that we've all been ingrained with, right? And the hard work and how many hours a day. That, to me, just being able to sit back and just trust the process and take breaks when I needed to was probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Well, good. Like I said, so far the books, I'm loving what I'm reading so far, and I look forward to finishing it up here soon. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
I'm not mistaken, it hit bestseller status, correct?
It did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, it did. Of course, I was monitoring the whole time. Refresh. Finally, I love it. I love to see that up there. So amazing work, Sheila. Amazing work.
And I'm just happy that it's, to me, that's not like a number, like, woohoo, I'm a bestseller. It's the number of copies that are in hands of people that I know, and the reviews. I read the reviews last night, like all of them, and I cried to see the impact that my story is having on people's lives. And so for me, that's what the bestseller status means.
Exactly.
That's why I wrote the book.
Yep. And it's just terrific. So again, congratulations. All right. So, you're welcome. Well, thanks again for being on the show. Now, folks, this will be the last podcast for the next 6 or 7 weeks, because I'm going to be heading off to the Arizona desert to climb mountains and look for gold and do all kinds of crazy things. That's providing, of course, the rodent problem on my truck is taken care of by Sunday. If not, well, different story completely. But we're just going to go on pause for a little bit, and then end of July, beginning of August, we're going to kick things back off again. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And if you're watching the replay, thank you very much. And again, Sheila, it's been a real pleasure for me to have you on the program. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I'm glad we got to connect.
All right. I have no idea what happened there. Did you hear me talking at all?
No.
Okay.
I just stopped hearing you talking, but it was still going. It's still going now.
Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead and end. Yeah, I hit a button. I picked up my mouse, and next thing I know, I was off the screen, and I'm like, oh no. All right. Anyway, I better stop everything before God knows what happens next. So have a good night, Sheila. I will reach out to you soon. So see you. Folks.
Yes. Oh my God. Have the best trip. I hope you keep us all updated somehow through.
I will try to do some Facebook Lives and put together some stuff to share the adventures.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very excited for you. I was going to say jealous, but probably not.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night, and we're going to go ahead and end the stream. Have a great night, and we'll see you in July or August. Thank you so very much for joining me on the Art Talk podcast, where it's my goal to bring artists together to talk about their craft. If you'd like to join me for a conversation, please reach out via email at johncoleartist@gmail.com or by visiting my website at johnrobertcole.com. So until next time, keep crafting, painting, and inspiring others with your creativity. You make more of an impact than you know. See ya.